Hello, everyone. In this session, I'm going to discuss inflation. So, we define inflation as a persistent rise in the general level of prices. We measure it by using a price index. Now, there are several indices, but we are going to, emphasize more on consumer price index. So these indices, as you can read here, consumer price index, wholesale price index, and GDP deflator. So I'll discuss consumer price index in more detail, but I will also compare consumer price index and GDP deflator as well. And as you know, I've already discussed the GDP deflator in chapter 3. It is the ratio of nominal GDP to real GDP. That is, nominal GDP divided by real GDP will give you a price index. And I'll discuss in a moment the difference between consumer price index and GDP deflator, which is a price index as well. Consumer price index, which we normally write as CPI, is a measure of price movements produced by Statistics Canada and obtained by comparing the retail, I bold this word, prices of a representative fixed in the bracket. By fixed, I mean that this shopping basket contains fixed goods and services year by year. So we are not changing the composition of that basket. So the basket is same, and we see what is the cost of buying this basket every year, and then we will measure the increase in the cost. That is inflation. So this is the website that I have attached here. So please go and see this website. So you have basically, this is basically the information about the shopping basket. So what types of goods and services included in this basket is given on this website. Okay, and all consumer goods and services are including durable, non-durable, other types of services. But of course, for example, uh, fighter jet or tanks or arms and ammunitions, these are not included as consumer goods. But the production of these goods are included in GDP though. And then I've also given you the information, the website on the same on Statistics Canada website, and this is what we call CPI portal, Consumer Price Index portal, and you have all relevant information about consumer price index. So please make sure that you go and at least see once, visit the site once, and see all the definitions and everything that I cannot copy and paste here. Now, how are we going to measure inflation? Because you must have read in the news papers that inflation during right after COVID was very high, close to 8%. And then because of the Bank of Canada monetary policy, that is policy rate, increase in policy rate will reduce inflation to around 3.3, 3.5%. How do we actually calculate this inflation rate? So consumer price index measures the average level of prices of the goods and services. And when I write goods and services, I mean consumer goods and services that a typical Canadian family consumes. Okay, so we calculate the CPI index as follows. So first we calculate consumer price index, and then using this consumer price index to calculate inflation rate. So how we calculate consumer price index? This is how we calculate. So first we calculate the cost of basket, and you know this basket is fixed basket of consumer goods and services in a given year, divided by cost of basket in a base year times 100. So suppose if the given year is, let's say, 2022, base year is 2021. So you just take the cost of this basket in 2021 and then cost of basket in 2022 and then multiply by 100, you get consumer price index For which year? For 2022. If you want to calculate consumer price index for 2021, that is the base year, you don't have to calculate it. Remember that the consumer price index for a base year is always 100, because if you write cost of basket in the given means, suppose base year divided by cost of basket in the base year, so they both are equal, it means 1 times 100. So base year CPI is always 100, and then you can calculate for the later years. Once you calculate consumer price index for all different years, then you can calculate inflation rate. Inflation rate is nothing but the growth in consumer price index. And you know how to calculate growth rates. That is, or growth rate, that is inflation rate. Inflation rate is growth in consumer price index. So index year 2, index means CPI, consumer price index. So consumer price index in year 2 minus consumer price index in year 1 times 100 divided by consumer price index in year 1. So this year 1 must match these two, and you can calculate consumer inflation rate. So go through those practice questions, and I've asked several questions to calculate inflation rate. Okay. So statistics, but there's, there are other measures of inflation as well, which I'm about to discuss. Statistics Canada also measures core inflation as well, or CPI trim, by excluding items with highly volatile prices such as fruits and vegetables, gas, fuel, mortgage interest, and tobacco. Actually, the problem is that basket contains some volatile goods and services as well. By volatile goods and services, I mean in terms of prices. So for example, gas prices or vegetable prices, they're fluctuating every single day. So it's very difficult to conclude anything based on that index. So what we do, we means Statistics Canada calculates actually core inflation. By core inflation, I mean we remove all those products that has high fluctuation in prices are fluctuated a lot. So those products that has very high fluctuation, we just remove those items in the basket and then recalculate inflation. So that inflation is called core inflation. So I've already given you Bank of Canada website. Just go visit this website and you will see key inflation indicators and the target range. So first you will get total consumer price index, then core inflation. And in core inflation, you have three different types of core inflation: CPI trim, CPI median, CPI common. We know that Bank of Canada target range is 1 to 3%. So normally Bank of Canada wants inflation rate to be 2%. So but it can fluctuate between 1 to 3%. Read from the following Bank of Canada website. So if you read from here, okay, let me just give me a second and I can share this with you, share my screen and show you this website as well. I'll show you because we don't have enough time but you have to go through the definitions there. So just give me a second. It will, let me first upload this, click this website. Okay, so I can see here, this is the website. Okay, now I will take I will share my screen. So just give me a second. So share, okay, share application screen, and let's see if I can see. I don't see that. No, I don't see. Oh, hold on. It is in the other. Hold on a second. Okay. Just give me a second. Let me find the mm, file. Mm, mm. I can I copy and paste this? Let's see if it works. Uh, mm, I guess it is working. Yeah, okay. So let me now share my screen. Uh, Here, go share application screen. And let's see if I can. Yeah, here it is, I believe. Let's check this. Yeah, should be. Okay. This is the website that I wanted you to go and see. So I hope you are seeing this uh, website. So this is key target. Just give me a second, right? Let me where it is. Okay, hold on a second. So let me. Okay, yeah. See, so these are key inflation indicators and the target range. So you have total consumer price index, CPI trim, CPI median, and target range. So if you look at this diagram, you will see that the range is from 1% to 3%. But the Bank of Canada wants inflation rate to be 2%. Okay. Now, this is the consumer price index. So this is the target range. Yellow is total CPI. So notice that in 2022, after 2022, inflation rate actually hit 8.1%. Okay. But when you remove those volatile variables, so remove variables with volatile prices, notice that the inflation, that is core inflation, decreases. So CPI was 8.1% inflation, and for trim it's only 5.6, and for median it's only 5. But now currently we are very close, and we are really slightly less than. Oh no, we are now above 3.9%. No, this is CPI. Total CPI is 3.3%, slightly above that range. Then you have all definitions here. So consumer price index, what is the definition? Core inflation measures, CPI trim, CPI median, and in where CPI, yeah, CPI median and CPI trim, core inflation. Okay, so these are the two given here. But why we have three here? Let me check which is not given. CPI trim, CPI medium, yeah, total CPI. Okay, so core inflation has two, CPI trim and CPI median. Yeah, in the slide, I also wrote CPI common, but don't worry about that measure because it requires other methods to calculate. So this is well beyond the jurisdiction of this basic course on macroeconomics. Okay, so make sure you just see this website. Okay, now let me go back to our slides. That's PowerPoint slides. So let me share file, and I go. Just give me a second. It takes a minute. I don't know where's the file. Here it is. Okay. So let me Okay, so this is the, yeah, so forget about, don't worry about, not forget, don't worry. But if you want, you can read. I'm not saying in the same website you can find CPI common as well, right? But I'm interested more that you should know what is core inflation, what is total CPI. You should know the target range. These are the things that you should know. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now we measure inflation using GDP deflator, because I told you this is also a price index. So GDP deflator, as I said earlier, is nominal GDP divided by real GDP times 100. This is called GDP deflator. But the problem here, if you read this, it says GDP deflator is a measure of the price level of goods and services included in the GDP. So when I say goods and services, I'm not saying only consumer goods and services. All goods and services produced in the country will be included in this price measure. So this is not a true reflection of a consumer price index. Okay, this is more comprehensive in nature. So why not let's just compare these two indices. So I'm now comparing CPI with GDP deflator, and these are the three important differences that you should know. So in CPI, bundle of goods remains constant. I told you when I was discussing consumer price index that we just have a fixed market basket. So the goods and services are fixed year by year. That is the only way we can see how prices are changing for the same product. In case of GDP, this is not the case. Every year, country is producing different goods and services, not necessarily exactly the same. So bundles of goods changes each year. That is one difference. Second, CPI does not include capital or government goods and services, because these are not consumer goods. Capital goods are not consumer goods. So if you are manufacturing or if you are, producing equipment and machines, we are not going to consume them directly. So they are not included in CPI. But in GDP deflator, all these goods are included. Consumption goods, investment goods, government expenditures, and uh, export, but we subtract imports. In consumer price index, we include imported goods as well. Remember this. So if I am consuming a product that is produced outside Canada, that will be included in consumer price index. So because of the supply chain problems due to COVID-19, if prices for those products are increasing because of these supply chain barriers or restraints, that is reflected in consumer price index, because now I'm higher paying higher prices for those imported goods. Okay, but in GDP deflator, we actually don't include even imported good. Why? Because GDP is the production of all goods and services, all final goods and services produced within a country, not outside. But consumer pricing index, that basket includes all those goods, doesn't matter where they are being produced, consumed by Canadians. So these are the three main differences. Now, this is the information that I actually downloaded from Statistics Canada website. So you can just go and check this, go to the inflation tab, and then you can see this data. This is, no, this is a bit old, but you can definitely get the recent data for August 2023. So this is how we actually use this data. So these are the, so first, this is the basket, consumer price index. This is the basket, this is the index, the cost of that basket, fixed basket. If you include all items, that is 100% of the basket. Weight is 100% for all basket, for all goods and services. Then in November 2019, suppose if the base year is 2002, the November 2019 index is this 136.4. This is index. This is not inflation. This is not growth. This is just index. And next year, November 2020, that is after 1 year, this index changes from 136 or increases from 136.4 to 137.1. Now you calculate the growth rate. That is 137.7 minus 136.4 divided by 136.4 times 100. So you'll get around 0.95 something percent. So I just round this off to 1%. So inflation is 1% between November 2019 to November 2020. Now we have all these different categories in that basket. So you have products related to food, then shelter, then household operation, clothing, transportation, gasoline, all these are included. But we don't just take the average of all these products. We give different weight because some goods are more important to consumer compared to others. So the highest weight is given to shelter. Notice is 27.36% weight assigned to shelter. So it's a weighted average. It's not just we add all these number and divide by total number of goods and services. We just have to add the weighted average. Similarly, look at this. Transportation is also very important, very high weightage. And health and personal care, recreation, education, reading, 30. Alcohol beverages, okay, alcoholic beverages, tobacco products, and recreation, cannabis, 3.2. So these are different weights, and you can see that let me first clear these annotations, and then you'll understand what I'm saying. So for example, if I want to see what is the inflation or what is the increase in price in percentage term for only food items, I can easily calculate, and the data is available, is 1.9%. So notice actually the overall inflation is 1%. It does not mean that price of each and every good or service is increasing. No, the prices of some goods and services are increasing, but for some other goods and services they might be decreasing. And you can see here that for clothing and footwear during that time period, you have minus 2.3%, minus. So there's a decrease in prices in between 2019 and 2020. Similarly, I have attached other data as well. I know this is up to 2022. You can easily update as well. So all items excluding food. For example, if you want to calculate what is inflation rate, if you don't consider food, then it is 0.7% inflation during that same time. All items excluding food and energy, all items excluding energy, all items excluding gasoline. So you can have different ways to calculate inflation. Why excluding gasoline? Because prices are fluctuating a lot. Now there are two types of inflation. Why consumer price index is increases? What is the reason behind it? Why do we have inflation in the first place? Why prices of those goods and consumer goods and services are soaring right after COVID-19 pandemic, right? What are the reasons? There are primarily two main reasons. Number one is called demand pull inflation, and number two is cost push inflation. So you can read this definition, but I'm just going to give you an example of demand pull inflation. When demand is more than supply, price will increase. Suppose if everyone is working here and they have more money to spend, they're going to buy goods and services, whereas you don't have that available goods and services. So producer will charge you higher prices because of excess demand in the economy. For the last almost 18 months, Bank of Canada continuously increasing policy rate. Why? So that they can reduce your demand. Because if rate of interest is high, you're not going to buy houses because the mortgage costs will be high. So when demand decreases, it will exert less pressure on prices. So that is one reason, that demand is more than supply, and therefore you are buying more. And this is possible only during during expansionary phase of the business cycle. It's not possible in recession. In recession, people don't have employment. There's huge unemployment. They're not going to buy more goods and services. They would rather postpone their expenditures, unnecessary expenditures. But if you are working, if you're working and you have more money in your pockets, then definitely you tend to buy or spend more. That is one reason. The other reason is cost push inflation. Cost push inflation means that demand is not increasing. Prices are increasing not because we want to buy more, but because cost of production has gone up. Why? Maybe suppose if you are using some imported raw materials or inputs in your production process, and the price of those imports increases, then your cost of production will increase. It doesn't matter whether you are demanding more or less. The producer are going to charge higher prices because they have to include that additional cost in their calculation of profit. So they charge higher prices. Similarly, if wage rate goes up in the country, of course, producers are going to charge higher prices because they are paying higher wages as well. And sometimes simply producers or these manufacturers, they want to make or earn higher profits. And for that reason, they might charge you higher prices as well. So cost push inflation is like wage push inflation, profit push inflation, and import push inflation. So suppose if the price of oil is increasing in the international market, and some countries are importing oil, they are not producing oil at all, and they need that gasoline in different manufacturing units, what would happen? The price will go up simply because of increasing price in the international market. So this is cost push inflation. This is not because consumer demand more. Now, diagrammatically, it's so easy to analyze. So I'm quickly draw one diagram here for demand pull inflation. So suppose this is the aggregate demand. Suppose this is aggregate supply. We will discuss this topic more in later sessions. So don't worry about it. So this is suppose price index. This is not price of one product. This is price for the whole basket, suppose. And this is, what should I write? This is, let's say, Y. That is the total production of the country, GDP. And this is not consumer price index. This is GDP deflator. So notice, let me show you. So if demand, aggregate demand increases, see what is happening. Price will increase. So if demand increases, price will also increase. This is called demand pull inflation. On the other hand, if you have same aggregate demand, aggregate supply, there's no change in aggregate demand, but the problem is the cost of production is increasing. So the suppliers in the country will charge higher prices for the same level of production. That is, this aggregate supply curve will shift to the left because now they are charging higher prices. So what happens? See, price will also increase. So in both cases, prices are increasing. But there's a big difference, which I'm going to discuss in the later sessions, don't worry. In this diagram, that is in the demand pull inflation, notice that at least output is increasing. Yes, we have inflation, but we have less unemployment. Here in the second diagram, we have inflation, but the output production is also decreasing. So we have both inflation at the same time unemployment. And this is called stagflation. By stagflation, this is basically the amalgamation of two different words, stagnant and inflation, and we call it stagflation. Stagflation means that the economy is becoming stagnant, that is, we have higher unemployment rate, that is why GDP is decreasing, and at the same time prices are also increasing. Okay. But what you need to know, don't worry about stagflation right now, just you should know what is demand pull inflation and what is cost push inflation. This is rule of 70. Actually, it solves, this rule solves our problem of calculating this one specific information. That is, you can use financial formulas to calculate this. So let me first discuss what is rule of 70. So it will tell you, this rule of 70 will tell you how many years it will require, or you require, to double things. Anything. If you know the growth rate. Suppose if I tell you that population growth rate is 2%, after how many years the population will double? Suppose GDP growth rate is 3%. After how long GDP will double? I am saving at a rate of 10%. What is the after how long I have my account? I have my account that is exactly twice of what it was before. Okay, so the example is given here, and this is one simple example you understand easily. But there are other questions in the practice question file. So suppose if you invested $1,000 at 10%. So suppose you have $1,000 in your saving accounts, and let's assume you are earning 10% interest rate. After how long you will have $2,000 in your account? Because every year you are earning 10%. What you do, just write this 70, that is from here, this rule of 70, and then this 10%, instead of 10%, just write 10. Don't write 0.1, just 10. So you will get 7 years. So it will take 7 years to double. So after 7 years, you will have $2,000 in your account. Similarly, if the population growth rate is 5%, so population is 5%, doesn't matter what is the total population. If it's 40 million, doesn't matter. After how long it will become double, then you just simply take 70 of this. In some textbook they write 72, but doesn't make any huge difference or significant difference, and divide by 5. This is 5%, so you have 14 years. So suppose if Canada's population right now is 40 million, and suppose if the growth rate is 5% population growth, then I know after 14 years Canada's population would be 80 million. Suppose if you are considering other country, let's say that has a population of 60 million, and this country is also, population growth is also in the country is 5%, then after 14 years, this country's total population would be 120 million. Why 120? Just double, 60 times 2. So this is what we call rule of 70. Why 120? Just double, 60 times 2. So this is what we call rule of 70. So this rule estimates the time it will take for a figure to double in value given the percentage growth rate. But you don't have to take in percentage term. Just take the absolute value. 10% means 10, not 0.1. 5% does not mean 0.05, just 5. Okay. Now, like cost of unemployment, we have cost of inflation, and this is all self-explanatory. So I'm just going to read this out just to make sure that you have to read this topic from your textbook as well. Distribution effect of inflation. Owners of the physical assets benefit from inflation. So for example, if I have a house that I paid off, and if prices are increasing, I'm making more money when I sell. So I'm not at all worried about this. While those who want to buy them will need to pay more. So those buyers, because of inflation, they are impacted more because they have to pay this higher price. Inflation is good for borrowers. If I borrow $1,000 now and I pay after 1 year with interest rate, but because of the inflation for the whole year, the real value of the lender's money will be slightly lower because of higher prices. That is purchasing power of that money. And that is the reason lenders, in order to avoid the, include the cost of inflation as well. So they charge you interest rate. Oh, sorry. So they charge you interest rate, nominal interest rate, that is actually real interest rate plus inflation. So normally they add inflation rate as well. So suppose if real interest rate is 3% and inflation rate is 2%, so the bank will lend you money not at 3%, but at 5%. Why? 3% is their interest and 2% they want to cover from inflation as well. Other cost, loss of purchasing power. So if you are getting the same income and if prices are increasing, then your purchasing power will decrease. With the same amount of money, you will buy less goods and services. Lower investment, because inflation erodes the value of investment returns over time. And lower net exports, decrease exports and increase imports. If domestic price level, that is, if you have inflation in your country, then foreigners are not going to buy your products because the price of your products are higher because of inflation. And Canadians would rather buy from outside Canada. Why? Because it would be relatively cheap to buy imported products because of high inflation rate in Canada. So I've already written here, you prefer cheap imported goods and export less because your cost of production is high. So first, the importers or the foreigners are not going to buy your product because your prices are higher, and also you cannot export because you can't compete with other countries if your domestic prices are soaring. So that's all as far as the inflation topic is concerned. Please, I will upload probably within half an hour all the articles that I want all of you to read, and also watch this session at the same time. So thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.